What's up, guys? My name is Fari, and I build systems that remove bottlenecks within businesses. And I've been documenting my builds for 131 days now, going all the way up to 365. And in today's video, we're going to be going through how value is rewarded through clarity. And I think this is one of the most important things that I've been thinking about as well in recent times, which is how can I be more clear and understanding that through clarity that ultimately creates value. And what I mean by this is that, for example, if you have clarity and you have, somewhat of a sense of direction for what it is that you want out of life, and you sort of, reverse engineer how to get that, you ultimately are rewarded. And surely it may not be instantaneous, it may not happen tomorrow, it may not happen the day after, but ultimately through that sense of clarity it ultimately allows the universe to somewhat move around and ultimately get you to where you want to get to. And I think for me, in my personal experience, in times where clarity has not been clear, like as clear as it should have been, for me personally, that's where the times I found myself kind of not really understanding or really focusing on the why and the main mission for what it is that I've always wanted to do. And I think, the biggest turning point for me was ultimately creating and understanding that value ultimately, is created through clarity, and understanding that through that clarity, that ultimately forms the reward that I'm ultimately chasing. And this clarity is in so many different things. It's in whatever you want. And it sounds cliche some of the times, of truly understanding, what it is that you want out of life. But I think there's so much truth in that, even in systems. If you're building systems and they're super clear and you focus so much time and energy on creating that clarity, then you ultimately build systems that, remove bottlenecks, in a more efficient manner, because it's, hey, we want to get to this objective. We understand what the limiting factors are. And through those limiting factors, we're going to plan XYZ solutions around that. And that builds clarity in the sense that, hey, if there's a potential threat or there are potential things that may go wrong, you also ultimately plan for that as well. But understanding that clarity is one of the most important things as well, especially, that I've realized just from the conversations, and also, building as well. If you look at, the guys that are like the leaders in different industries, you can definitely tell straight away that they have a high degree of clarity. And I think this is one of the truest forms of, actively building and understanding how to form better loops of clarity, and forming those loops as well, through feedback loops and also iteration as well. Because you ultimately, in my experience, clarity is not just a, hey, like I wake up today and I ultimately have a high degree of clarity. I believe it's a process that ultimately is never ending, as most of the things that I always talk about, products are never ending, which are basically systems that are living and breathing. And I think this is also true as well, in the sense that, if you're able to then understand that, this, clarity is formed through iterations, feedback loops, and this entire process, then you can somewhat reverse engineer to say, what I want, the direction, is ultimately to gain a high degree of clarity. And through that high degree of clarity, how do I then form it in terms of the things that I'm doing today? What are the things that I'm doing today that are somewhat leading to this this clarity mode that is forming? And how can I ultimately compound this as well? And also tracking that as well, because you're not going to fully understand. You may say that, hey, I want to form a high degree level of clarity, but your daily actions also don't match that as well. And this is one of the most important tools that I've ultimately been thinking about in recent times, as to how can I use these videos as somewhat of a mode to form that high degree of clarity by just posting each and every single day, refining my thinking, refining how I'm seeing the world. And I know through that, then we're going to be able to iterate on that. But that's also to say that clarity, in my personal opinion and how I see the world right now, is not always a thing that, happens instantaneously. It sharpens over time, and understanding how it sharpens over time is equally as important, because this is only going to translate into the things that, I'm going to be building, day to day, and also going into the future, you know? And sometimes you may not always have that clarity, but I think that is where, a lot of it is formed through those times where you don't have clarity and you have to figure out how to get a high degree of clarity, as well, you know. You may not always get it in that moment in time, but just actively doing things and, trying different things as well, and running those feedback loops, and ultimately understanding like where you're failing, where you also, getting your systems wrong. Is it the process? Is it the mapping? What stage of it are you getting wrong? That is ultimately leading you to not getting the results that you want. And I think, forming that high degree of clarity is equally as important, because you see all the, industry leaders that are, building cool things and, ultimately doing the things that they're doing. They have a high degree of clarity. But if you reverse engineer that and kind of look underneath the curtain, you see how that high degree of clarity was formed through thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of iterations and feedback loops that ultimately created that form of clarity. So then how do you form it, And right now, the way that I see it is ultimately tracking, like I mentioned, tracking, understanding the day-to-day actions that ultimately lead into, forming that high degree of clarity, and also understanding, where the energy leaks are, and also where I don't form like a high degree of clarity, or what is leading me to not form that high degree of clarity. And I think that is equally as important, just understanding all the different various aspects of forming this clarity. And I know, like the more clarity we are then able to gain, the better products we're then able to ship, simply because, we understand a lot deeper and we have a sense of direction for what it is that we want to build and how to get there as well. And I think this is equally as important in any stage of building, to ultimately understand, this is the degree of clarity that we ultimately want to form and want to shape. And how do we move towards that on the day-to-day, actions, on our day-to-day actions? And how do we constantly compound that as well? Because most of the things that happen, especially when you're talking about clarity, it ultimately comes as a, result of the compounding actions that you take on the day-to-day. Fully understanding, what am I doing today that is creating that high degree of clarity? Am I moving with certainty? Am I moving knowing the direction that I'm moving towards? And I think that is one of the most important things as well, to be an operator that ultimately builds things, and builds things that, ultimately helps people as well. Just forming that high degree of clarity, I think, is one of the things that, you see the elite level guys, the industry leaders doing. So why not take a page out of their book and, use that as somewhat of a mode to build, clarity, and understand that clarity is a superpower as well, that ultimately allows you to know what you want and get to where you want. But that ultimately comes as a result of, the starting point of being, knowing what your definite chief aim is. And if you know what that reference is to, it's to Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, one of my personal favorite books. Just solely understanding, what it is that you want, and then having a burning desire towards attaining that, and moving each and every single day in accordance to that burning desire. And through that, I think, and I believe, in my experience, clarity has been formed. Just through doing things and just, building to the max, I like to say, that ultimately forms the clarity that allows you to then build, the things that then 10x your input and ultimately gets you to your grand vision as well. But this also just ultimately starts, like I said, from knowing what it is that you want in specificity and like as much specific detail, and then ultimately reverse engineering how to get there. And I think this is one of the most under leveraged or tools that can ultimately be used in order to attain the things that you want as well. While whether you're building, whether you also just trying new things as well, and just moving forward each and every single day. And that is a thought that I have had, just trying to increase the level of clarity. And that clarity I know is going to compound in terms of also creating opportunities, because opportunities also move towards the person that is legible, that people understand what they're doing as well. So, for example, if you're selling this complicated thing or, whatever the case may be, people aren't going to understand. And as a result of that, they're not going to buy from you. And understanding that also at the same time, that is a signal to get more clear on what it is that you're building and what it is that your messaging also entails, and as well as your positioning. The clearer your positioning, the clearer your message is as well, the better your people understand what it is that you're providing. And for me, maybe in the beginning, I was not probably as clear in terms of, fully understanding, or not fully understanding, but fully articulating what it is that I am doing and building. And that was also just signal to probably, take that and learn from that as well. But also, opportunities flow to the person that is clear on what it is that they want. And somewhat, I believe that the world also just kind of moves in your way and ultimately focuses on the person that is most clear about what their objectives is, and understanding that, building the person as well into the person that is able to then form this high degree of clarity through the day-to-day actions, I think is also as powerful, because that ultimately comes as a compounding mode as well. That high degree of clarity, like I've mentioned a couple of times. But yeah, I believe opportunities flow to the person that is most clear about what it is that they want and what they want to obtain in the world, and the world just somewhat moves out of their way or moves the world around them in order to build what it is that they want to build. And I think that's true. Not everyone is gonna always see the world the way that you see it, but if you see the world the way that you see it, then you're ultimately going to be able to somewhat build it around your vision for it. And I think that is the most powerful tool, to be able to say, I'm going to build the world in the way that I see it. And if I get it wrong, I get it wrong. But if I get it right, I get it right. And I'm just going to build anyways. And I think that is super powerful. And one thing that I also want to take with me, not only just today, but also going into the future. And I know we're going to make so many mistakes as well, but that is ultimately us, just chipping away, trying to form that high degree of clarity that ultimately gets rewarded through time. It's not always an instantaneous thing, but ultimately just getting those experiences as well that ultimately build that level of clarity. And staying the game the longest and being durable as well, building something that lasts through time and staying super bent on the mission. And I know that through that, we're ultimately going to get one step closer each and every single day. But it comes as a result of the inputs, and those inputs are day to day just trying to shape the high degree of clarity that ultimately gets us to where we need to get to. And yeah, it's probably one of the things that I will continue to take with me as I build, as I continue to figure things out, and also scale into the future. So just going deeper than ever, and building each and every single day. And I know we're gonna get there, but we're gonna make mistakes. But ultimately, we're gonna get there, and we're gonna help as many business owners and people as we possibly can. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my newsletter. Link is the first one in the description. And also, if you want to connect, make sure to check out my X, LinkedIn, Instagram. All the links are in the description. And I will see you guys in the next one.